High mountains have always fascinated mankind. Reaching up towards the sky, these jagged giants awaken our primal instinct to climb up to the summits. This also applies to Swiss alpinist Andreas Steindl. Born and raised in Zermatt, surrounded by 38 peaks of over 4,000 meters, he inherited his passion for mountains. But the 26-year-old mountain guide has a very special relationship to the local mountain range. The alpine summits are his playing field. He likes to run up the mountains and speed down again, just to fit in more climbs in one day. Andreas Steindl is the son of a mountain guide father and a passionate amateur mountaineer mother. At the age of 14, he climbed his first 4,000-meter peak, the Matterhorn. Today, 12 years later, he has stood more than 80 times on this iconic peak. With 2 hours and 57 minutes, he even holds the Matterhorn speed record from Zermatt.
He has enjoyed mountain runs ever since he was a teenager. There you could already see how fast he could be.
Being the fastest man on the Swiss side of the Matterhorn definitely makes Andy well known in this valley. He is completely focused. When he has a goal, he chases it.
Climbing up a 4,000-meter peak is like a training session for the passionate mountaineer. In 2012, Steindl became a member of the Swiss National Ski Mountaineering Squad. In 2013, he won the World Championship with the team. He also set speed records on expeditions. Together with his friends Samuel and Simon Untermatten, he climbed the alpine route Infinite Spur at Mount Foraker in Alaska in only 3 instead of the usual 5 to 8 days.
For us climbers, and for other mountain climbers, it remains a competition and a sporting idea. But it's not like running around a track or swimming in the pool. It is climbing in the mountains.
For the main part, I don't really see myself as a trail runner or ski mountaineer. I came to these other sports through mountain climbing. But I find it very interesting to put everything together. To start in the valley and climb or run to the top like in trail running, and then get out my crampons and carry on over snow, ice and rocks, simply combining everything.
Andreas Steindl is the embodiment of a modern multi-sport outdoor athlete. Always on the move, and mostly uphill. For his basic endurance, he rides his mountain bike, while training his balance, coordination, and concentration on a slack line in the park. Although he usually does his mountain projects on his own, Andreas Steindl is a convivial person. Family and friends are very important to him. They give him the backing for his extreme sports.
For my latest project, I'll be running from Zermatt to Saas Fee, and that involves crossing 5 peaks over 4,000 meters, including the highest peak in Switzerland, the Dome. I'll be starting in Zermatt at 3:15 in the morning at an altitude of 1,600 meters, taking the route across the Eisnase, up the Alphübel. From the Alphübel, I'll head down the Mischabel Saddle, and then from the Mischabel Bivak, carry on up to the Teschhorn. From the Teschhorn, I'll then climb up to the Dome, which will be the crux. After that, it's back down the glacier before climbing up to the Lenzspitze, and then eventually on to the Nadelhorn, the nicest part of the route. Last but not least, I'll head from the Nadelhorn down to Saas Fee, and I hope to get to Saas Fee in less than 9 hours. Many factors have to come together to realize this project. I have to be completely fit, both mentally and physically. I have to feel right in my head. The conditions on the mountain, like the snow and the weather, have to be perfect. The forecast for tomorrow looks good, and we've already checked out the conditions on the mountain. I feel great, also mentally, so there's actually nothing staying in my way. Crossing from the Teschhorn to the Dome will be my biggest challenge, and I have great respect for that traverse, because there are some real difficult spots. It's respect, not fear.
In the evening, the Swiss prepares his equipment for the next day. In his small backpack, he only carries what's absolutely necessary: a light jacket, a headband, gloves, sunglasses, crampons, a lightweight ice pick, carbo bars and gels, as well as a hydration pack with an isotonic drink.
In terms of the minimalist equipment, in my opinion, everyone in the mountains needs to bring enough equipment to guarantee their safety. Someone who spends 300 days a year in the mountains, who trains, who is prepared, who climbs and runs, can take different safety precautions to someone who only comes to the mountains 10 times a year. As a professional, he can equip himself that he feels good and still has adequate protection while being able to perform at his level.
Before going to bed, the mountain guide prepares his playlist for the next morning. It will be a short night.
I was a bit nervous when I finally opened the door this morning to get going. But after a while, I was actually really glad the day had finally come and I could finally do it. I felt great, and to mentally prepare and motivate myself a bit more, I listened to my favorite music on the way to the church, so that everything feels perfect. I was really nervous the last few days. Last night, I went for an easy ride on my mountain bike, and my legs felt a bit heavy, so I thought that maybe I wasn't quite 100% recovered.
Andreas Steindl has waited 2 years for this day. In the summer of 2013, he crossed the 5 peaks over 4,000 meters for the first time and needed an unbelievable 9 hours and 3 minutes for that venture. Since then, Steindl has waited for the opportunity to repeat his 5 peaks tour and beat his own time.
At the start, I tried to set off fast to test out if I could go at a high pace or not. But I felt great from the start. I reached my first marker in Tüftern after 32 minutes. I felt good inside and good enough to keep up the speed. In the beginning, there's a wide path that leads up to the Teschhütte from the Teschhalt, but then it changes into a hiking trail, which gets steeper and steeper on the way up to the glacier. It was slowly getting light as I got there. There I got the crampons out, put my headlamp away, and carried on over the glacier to the Alphübelsaddle. The Alphübelsaddle is the first point from which you can see the entire mountain range and the sun that was slowly rising. Sunrise is always outstanding, especially after walking in darkness for 3 hours. The day is slowly dawning with the first rays of sunlight, and for me, personally, that's important, and I always love seeing that. After the Alphubel saddle, you move above 4,000 meters and it gets more difficult to breathe. That's where I had my first bit of trouble, as it gets a lot more strenuous. I had to slow down to avoid wearing myself out. The snow conditions were very good, the snow was hard, and there was a good track, so I found good rhythm to head up to the Alphubel.
Steindl reaches the first 4,000-meter peak, the 4,206-meter high Alphubel, after 3 hours and 10 minutes, 22 minutes ahead of his previous time.
The summit of the Alphubel is quite flat, so I could break into a bit of a jog. But when I started going downhill, I had to slow down again because it was getting steeper, and you really have to watch out with trail running shoes and crampons. After about 100 meters, I didn't need the crampons anymore, so I put them away, and I didn't actually need them again for the rest of the day. The way up to the Teschhorn is really jagged. From time to time you have to take big strides and do a bit of climbing and then a bit more hiking. You lose the rhythm you had before, and it's crucial that you find your rhythm again as quickly as possible. There are also brittle rocks here that you have to watch out for. A bit further up it gets sandy and doesn't hold together very well, so it's quite unstable.
On the 4,491-meter-high Teschhorn Peak, which he reaches after 4 hours and 21 minutes, Steindl runs into a group of mountaineers who needed 2 days for the ascent. He doesn't even pause for a second, as he's already 41 minutes ahead of his old time. Now he enters the crux, the most challenging part of the route, the traverse to the dome.
The most difficult part was definitely crossing from the Teschhorn to the dome. The conditions on the descent from the Teschhorn were actually very good. The rocks were dry, but they got a bit slippery from the frost. That was a bit tricky. I had to think about pulling the crampons out again, but I left them and really just had to be careful because it was quite slippery. On that descent, you always move on steep slabs of rock where you can get a good grip, but you have to be very careful. During the crossing from the Teschorn to the dome, there are some vertical climbing passages, sheer faces with brittle rocks that you have to deal with. That's the mental aspect that comes into play, because you're really exposed on that ridge. You just have to keep a level head and believe in what you're doing. You basically just have to tell yourself, if you can do it at a height of 1 meter, then you can do it here too. It's all about what's in your head.
The Dome in the Mischabel mountain massif, the highest mountain lying entirely in Switzerland, a majestic 5,445-meter high giant that saw its first ascent in 1858. Climbing it from the Teschorn side entails many risks.
The ascent up to the dome is quite challenging, especially when you're alone. There's a lot of fragile rock there, and you really have to be careful what you hold on to or where you put your feet. So it was quite precarious. Danger is always present in the mountains. The dome is definitely one of the most important spots in this project. It's the highest peak in Switzerland at over 4,000 meters. When I reached the summit of the dome, there were already a lot of people up there motivating me and calling out to me.
For the demanding traverse from the Teschorn to the dome, the young alpinist only needed 1 hour and 4 minutes.
After that, the descent from the dome was quite simple. You're running on snow the whole time. That means you can relax a little bit. Follow the track, pick up the pace. It's also fun to start moving quicker again. After picking up the pace on the way down from the dome to the Lens saddle, I found the ascent to the summit of the Lens Spitze a bit exhausting. The climb in itself isn't so hard, but I was quite tired and had the first signs of cramps. I had to stop 2 or 3 times, rest for 10 seconds, breathe, and then carry on.
Andreas Steindl reaches the 4th peak, the 4,294-meter-high Lenzspitze, after 6 hours and 7 minutes. Meanwhile, he has increased the lead to 1 hour and 11 minutes.
From the summit of the Lenzspitze to the Nadelhorn, you have to climb up and over some rock towers. It's constantly up and down. You can't find any rhythm. I always prefer long ascents and long descents over constant ups and downs. When I later came to the Nadelhorn and the summit cross was in front of me, I just wanted to embrace it. It meant that the most difficult and most dangerous part was over. I was really relieved that nothing had happened, because something bad can always happen.
After 5 summits, Andreas Steindl is 1 hour and 16 minutes ahead of his old time. Can he maintain this lead until Saas Fee? Now, he only has to run down 2,500 vertical meters across ice, snow, and pathless terrain into the valley.
After the glacier, you get to the Mischabelhütte, then it's finally downhill. But in that upper part, it's via ferrata. You have to do a part of the descent over ladders, ropes, and steel cables. You have to stay focused there. And at that time, it was getting really hot, so I took my shirt off. Otherwise, I would have been sweating too much. I kept going, but I was mentally exhausted by then. I lost my footing 2 or 3 times, so I really had to slow down to avoid tearing a ligament or worse, breaking my foot.
Although he can already see Saas Fee, it's still a long way down. In 2013, Steindl needed only 1 hour and 10 minutes for his downhill run into the valley.
There was a mountain stream a bit before Saas Fee where I quickly washed my face to cool down a bit and then stepped on the gas for the final stretch into the town. I tried to give everything I had left until the end. Down onto the meadow, onto the roads, and then finally to the church.
And Steindl sets a new record, 7 hours, 45 minutes, and 44 seconds for 5 peaks over 4,000 meters, 4,015 meters of vertical ascent over 31 kilometers.
That was an amazing day for me. I'm incredibly happy now. Tired, but really happy and pleased. What more could you ask for from a day in the mountains? And with such good weather. I want to show people what's possible and maybe inspire others to head out to the mountains and experience something amazing like this.